Hey, Chris Fomasilla here with SoundEtiquette.com, and in this video I want to talk about the differences between Foley and sound design. Now, I have my own way of looking at this. You may have your own way of looking at it. I know that in my experience, the line between the two can get pretty thin and sometimes even blur. However, I still segment them into different categories in my mind, and I want to talk about how I see them as being different. Now, in Foley, to me, Foley is like a actual audible representation of what's happening on the screen visually. So let's say, for example, that you have a guy walking down the street. He puts a sweater on, zips it up, and then throws his hood on. Well, Foley would be the sound of his footsteps hitting the pavement, and then the sound of the sweater coming on, which would be some kind of cloth movement. If you listen, I'm gonna rub my shirt, and that's what it kind of sound like. You know, some kind of fine cloth movement. And then the sound of the zipper going up, and again, more cloth movement of the hood going on, right? That would be Foley and it would also be an actual recording. You know, you would either on set with the actor or even just with your own props, you can record the sounds of cloth movement and then the zipper going up, or you can try to close mic the scene while it's happening to capture those sounds. Or you can just artificially add them in post-production later, where you're in a home studio like this or any kind of studio, and you record those sounds and then you sync it to the video. Now, those would be actual recordings of the actual objects. And that would be one way of doing Foley. Now, the other way I see of doing Foley is emulating the sound of the object. For example, like, if you ever watch animal documentaries, like, you know, with David Attenborough, I love animal documentaries. I've been watching those since I was a kid. I watched them with my kids. And if you watch those things, you can see where, like, they'll have an alligator blinking and you can hear the sound. Or they'll have a caterpillar walking on a tree and you can hear the slippery movements with little sounds of the caterpillar's foot. And you have to ask yourself, how did they get those sounds? And the truth is that they didn't. Those are not actual recordings. They emulated the sounds of those things. And what they did is they took some kind of natural sound, or maybe not so natural, and then they synced it with the video. And they had to use something that's believable to the brain. You know, kind of tricks the brain into believing what they're seeing, even though you can't hear the sound of a caterpillar walking down on a tree stump. You can't hear that. At least I can't hear that. So they have to use some kind of natural sound to emulate that. Now, I still categorize those as Foley. One is an actual recording of the object. Another one is an emulated representation of the object. So typically, I think of Foley as being natural and realistic, and you know, there to represent movements of objects or characters or whatever in a scene. Now, sound design, I see this different. And I can't think of a better example than the Transformers movies. Now, in the Transformers movies, you have these huge robots, right, that are doing things. And you need Foley for the robots. Well, how would you get robot Foley? You can't actually go up to a transformer and record one because they don't exist. I mean, at least not on this planet. Maybe in a far off galaxy, they exist and there's big robots that can transform into buses and boom boxes and stuff, but we can't actually record that stuff. So what do? We have to design those sounds, right? We have to look at the character, like Optimus Prime. We have to look at him and look at his physical characteristics. What kind of things does he have on his body? What kind of sounds can we imagine for him? And then we would go and create them. We would design them. We would take one or more sounds and then start manipulating them and editing them and combining them in such a way to where we turn it into another sound. And then we sync it to the video to artificially emulate what we think the robot would sound like, to trick the person watching into believing that it's real, into buying it, in other words. To me, this is very different than the Foley side of the zipper. When you got the zipper going up, that's an actual recording of the zipper, right? but you can't get an actual recording of a transformer, so you have to design that sound. So, you know, you can see through my explanations that the line is kind of thin, it can get blurry, but there's still kind of a difference between the two. So like, to give you a couple more examples, let's say Foley, just watch a show like Friends or Seinfeld where there's not a lot of CGI, things like that. It's just a normal show of regular people talking and moving about, doing whatever they do. That's all Foley. That's all just body movement, walla, talking, you know, environments, ambiences, things like that. But then you take a show like Walking Dead where you have, just like Friends or Seinfeld, you have real people doing stuff, right? You have the actual Foley, but then it starts transitioning into sound design where you have zombies, right? And zombies, at least as far as we're aware of, aren't real. But they have to design those sounds. You know, they capture them from a vocal artist and then they process them and tweak them. It's still, you know, that's where the line starts to get thin between Foley and sound design. But also take the example of video games. I mean, video games is all sound design. You know, you do have the actual recordings. If you have an action within a game of a zipper going up, you're going to have a real zipper. But a lot of video games, it's like if you have wizards or you have demons or something, man, that's all sound design because you have to design the sounds for those characters in whatever they're doing. So that's just a brief explanation into the differences of how I see Foley and sound design. What are the differences between Foley and sound design to you? I mean, do you agree with anything I said? Do you disagree with anything I said? Is it spot on? Am I completely wrong and don't know what I'm talking about? Let me know in the comments. And if you're watching this on Facebook, like our page. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. I hope you got something out of this video. Again, thanks for watching. Chris Fomasili with SoundEtiquette.com, and I'll see you later.